Welcome to Pagoda Podcast, where we explore ideas, strategies, and insights to help businesses grow and scale. Today, we are taking a deep dive into something that, frankly, most business owners only wish they'd started thinking about years ago:
That's right.
acquisition preparation. And we're not talking about just a compliance checklist here. This is about, fundamentally changing how you think about your business's future.
It really is.
The source material we've pulled together for this deep dive, it flips the whole script on that typical reactive way of doing things. It really frames preparation as a strategic tool, not some last-minute chore you have to rush through.
And that strategic mindset is, it's absolutely critical. We're trying to shift the focus from just, selling what you have today
Right.
to actively building an enterprise that buyers have to pay a premium for. The data on this is just so consistent. The owners who get the highest rewards, they're the ones who are ready to sell at any given moment. Long before a buyer ever even picked up the phone.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get into the mechanics of that. What makes a transaction a high-value one? We need to define what buyers are truly buying, because it's not just about the revenue number on a P&L.
Not at all.
It's predictability. It's about the systems, and it's about quantified risk reduction. So we're going to explore how you build those things into the very infrastructure of your business now so you can create that massive negotiation leverage later on.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
The whole conversation really has to start with what the source material calls the big misconception.
Okay.
It's this belief, and it's so common among entrepreneurs, that you start preparing for an acquisition when a letter of intent, an LOI, lands on your desk.
Right. I've got a live one on the hook. Now it's time to get serious.
Exactly. And that belief is, without a doubt, the single most damaging, most costly error an owner can possibly make.
I can already hear the objection, though. The owner's saying, look, I'm busy. I'm growing my business. When I know I have a real buyer, I'll just, hire a consultant. I'll get an accountant to clean up the books and document everything then.
Right.
Why is that timeline, that reactive thinking, so disastrous?
Because the second that LOI is signed, the timeline isn't yours anymore. It's the buyer's.
Ah.
You are immediately thrown into this period of intense scrutiny. It's called due diligence. And let's be clear, due diligence is not a collaborative workshop.
No?
It is a surgical operation. It is designed specifically to uncover flaws, to find vulnerabilities, and to identify any potential future liabilities in your business.
So you're on the defensive from day one.
Completely. Now, just imagine trying to reorganize 5, maybe 10 years of messy contracts, or trying to establish a standardized pricing model for the first time, or trying to train your department heads on how to make decisions on their own.
And you're doing all this while
You're still running the business day to day. And on top of that, you're answering hundreds of, frankly, aggressive data requests from the buyer's audit team who are working on a crazy 60-day clock.
That sounds like a complete recipe for exhaustion. And more than that, for making critical mistakes.
It is.
If you're in a state of just panic and reaction, you're so much more likely to miss a detail or, present information that isn't consistent.
Precisely. And every single piece of that disorganization, every delay in producing a document they asked for, every report that doesn't quite match the last one,
It gets flagged.
it gets flagged by the buyer's team. And they don't look at that and think, oh, they're just a little disorganized. They see it as a fundamental flaw, a future liability, and a really good reason to demand a discount on the price they already agreed to.
So that's where you lose all your power in the negotiation.
You lose your agency completely. If you are rushing to write down a workflow that's been, tribal knowledge for 5 years.
Right, the way we've always done it.
The way we've always done it. You will inevitably miss critical steps. You'll introduce inconsistencies. Or you'll just fail to prove that the process can actually be repeated by someone else. A rushed process just signals weakness and, frankly, desperation. And it just destroys the trust that you need for a high-value deal.
Okay, so let's define what these buyers are actually purchasing.
Ugh.
It's not just last year's revenue. The sources are clear. They're evaluating, 4 key intangible assets. Let's start with the first one: predictability and consistency.
You have to think about the buyer's biggest fear. They're deploying a huge amount of capital, right? Often from investors. They are betting on the future performance of your business.
They need to know the money will keep coming in.
They need absolute certainty. Certainty that the revenue stream they see today will show up again next month, next quarter, and next year, even if your whole team changes. That's predictability. The economic engine just runs like a clock.
And consistency.
Consistency is about quality control. If your output, whether it's a product, a piece of software, a service, if it fluctuates wildly depending on which employee is doing the work.
Ah, so one person does it great, another person not so much.
Exactly. The buyer sees that as unstable quality, and that instability translates directly into risk.
Which leads right into the next intangible asset.
Hmm.
Robust systems and workflows. It's one thing to have a team of amazing people doing heroic things every day, but that's not a system, is it?
Absolutely not. In fact, it's the opposite of a system. Systems are the operating manual for repeatability,
The playbook.
the playbook. If I buy your business, what I'm really buying is your methodology for success. And if that methodology is undocumented, if it's unique to you, if it relies purely on your intuition or a key employee's gut feeling,
And what have I really bought?
you've bought a fragile, unscalable asset. Buyers are looking for processes that create predictability. They need to know that if they pour in 50% more capital to grow, the systems you have in place can actually handle that volume without just breaking down into total chaos.
The third asset is leadership maturity and depth. This really gets at that whole founder dependence trap. Why is a buyer so obsessed with who's making the decisions after the deal closes?
Because they're buying a business that can scale on its own. They're not buying a new job for the founder.
Right.
They need total assurance that the economic engine will keep running and maybe even run better when the chief engineer, the founder, steps away. If every decision has to go through one person, or if all the key client relationships live with one person,
The buyer sees a huge risk to business continuity.
a massive immediate risk. Mature leadership means you have a deep, capable bench. It means the founder has successfully made that shift from doing all the work to managing the system that does the work.
And the last one, minimized risk exposure. This feels like the catch-all for anything that could become an expensive surprise after they've already bought the company.
It's the defensive part of the equation. It covers legal risks like missing contracts or IP assignments. It covers compliance risks like regulatory fines. It covers technology risks like having ancient, insecure software.
And the rule here is pretty stark.
The rule is risk always translates into a valuation penalty. Always. So if you don't have that predictability, those systems, that leadership depth, and low risk, if those things aren't already clearly in place, the perceived quality of your business is low, and the valuation takes a hit right away. We're not even talking about negotiation tactics yet. This is just the basic quality check before the real conversation even starts.
So preparation is so much more than just getting your files in order. It's really about shaping the story, shaping the narrative.
Yes.
The goal is to shape the buyer's perception of your business's stability and scalability long before you even talk to them. And that's what creates leverage.
Leverage is everything. Just picture two scenarios. Scenario A, the buyer's team is doing diligence, and they find out your key customer contracts are missing critical IP language.
Oops.
They point it out, they demand an indemnity, and they demand a price cut. They have all the power.
And scenario B,
Scenario B, you found that same flaw 2 years ago, you fixed it in all your new contracts, and you systematically went back and renegotiated or got new IP assignments for the old ones, and you documented that entire process.
so when the buyer brings it up,
You can immediately hand them a file that proved the issue is already solved. Now you're negotiating from a position of strength, not defense. The most successful, highest value exits. They always come from businesses that were built to be sellable at any time, not from businesses trying to scramble and maximize a last-minute sale. That philosophical shift is the core message here.
all right, let's get into the mechanics of this, the real nuts and bolts. The source material calls this the operational dig. So when a buyer starts looking at how your business runs day to day, where do they start poking around first?
They go straight for the core value chain, the heart of the operation.
So how you make money.
Exactly. They're looking for the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, for the 3 or 4 things that actually generate revenue. You know, how you bring on a new client, how you deliver your product, how you bill for it, how you support customers. Their goal is simple.
Can we do this without you?
Can we replicate your success without your current team? If any process requires an employee to just, use their memory or guess or just know what to do next.
That's the tribal knowledge you mentioned.
That's scribal knowledge.
I gave you.
And it is viewed as a massive, quantifiable operational risk.
I really want to focus on that idea of tribal knowledge because we tend to celebrate that employee, right? The one who's been there forever and knows how to fix everything.
The hero.
The hero, exactly. Why is that specific undocumented expertise such a huge red flag in an acquisition?
Because tribal knowledge is the absolute enemy of scalability. You can't easily transfer it. You can't audit it. You can't replicate it across the buyer's much larger organization.
Mhm.
Let's use a classic example. You have a lead salesperson. Let's call her Janet. Janet knows exactly how to configure the most complex product bundles for your three biggest clients. She just bypasses the official quoting system because, well, she's always done it that way.
And it works. She closes the deals.
It works until Janet leaves, or worse, what if she quits right in the middle of due diligence?
Oh, that's a nightmare scenario.
It's a disaster. That expertise gap creates immediate problems, high error rates, and you risk losing those key accounts. The buyer is then forced to assign a real dollar cost to documenting that process and training replacements, and that cost comes directly out of the purchase price. Undocumented processes mean the quality of your business is fundamentally unstable.
So the risk-price correlation is incredibly direct here. You're saying that a buyer will literally calculate the future cost of fixing your operational mess and subtract it from their offer?
100%. Imagine a software company. Their deployment process is all manual. A small team of engineers has to go in and patch servers and update code by hand for every client. Due diligence discovers that this manual process has, say, a 10% error rate, which leads to unscheduled downtime for customers.
Okay.
The buyer estimates that integrating this into their automated CI/CD pipeline, their system, will cost $500,000 in engineering time and take 18 months. Then they calculate the risk of losing client revenue during that 18-month transition, maybe another $250,000.
So that's $750,000.
They will deduct that $750,000 plus a risk margin on top of it directly from the valuation. They see your operational risk as a future expense they have to pay for, and they will always demand a discount that's even larger than the calculated cost just to account for the uncertainty.
So the solution, the defense against this, is to demonstrate repeatability. What does a truly scalable operation look like to a buyer? What are they searching for?
First thing, and this is non-negotiable,
Yeah.
clear written workflows, a manual, a checklist, a flowchart, a process map for every core function. This proves the process is controlled, not just random.
And it has to be for everything, right? Not just making the product.
For all core functions, that's the second point. It means you need documentation for your finance team's month-end close process, the employee onboarding process, your IT maintenance schedule, your data backup procedures. Everything has to be traceable and documented.
And the third factor really gets to the heart of scalability, moving from reliance on people to reliance on systems.
That's it, system-driven execution. If your process depends on a specific person being super detail-oriented to remember all 17 steps of a task, you're relying on human fallibility.
It's not a system.
It's not a system.
Yeah.
But if the process relies on a robust CRM or an ERP system that forces you to complete certain field and upload documentation before you can move to the next stage,
The system enforces the process.
the system enforces the procedure, not the manager. The technology itself ensures compliance.
And what's the final piece?
Clear accountability across all teams. A buyer needs to know who is responsible when something goes wrong so they can enforce changes after the acquisition. If your system flags a problem, say customer service response times are too slow, there has to be a named department head who is explicitly responsible for fixing it. If accountability is fuzzy, the buyer worries they can't implement their own management controls, which just adds another layer of risk.
This all seems to point toward automation. We usually think of automation for cost savings, but the source material really emphasizes its role in consistency. How does automation become the enforcement mechanism for all this?
Automation guarantees that things are executed identically every single time. If your client onboarding workflow is automated, the sequence of emails, the documents requested, the internal handoffs, it happens the exact same way for every single client.
It takes human error out of the equation.
It removes human inconsistency, it eliminates transcription errors, and it frees the owner from having to constantly look over everyone's shoulder. It signals to the buyer that the business is resilient and its quality is standardized.
So if I suddenly double my customer base, an automated system can handle that predictably. A manual system, on the other hand, just scales into an expensive, chaotic mess that needs the owner to step in constantly.
Exactly right. Automation proves that your current level of quality is sustainable at a much, much larger volume. It shows the buyer that your business isn't just some bespoke, high-touch local shop. It's a replicable, scalable model that's ready for institutional-level investment.
Mm-hmm.
When you can show them that, you are significantly de-risking their growth plans, which absolutely justifies a higher valuation.
Okay, let's move on to the financials. This is an area where I think a lot of owners feel pretty confident. They think my CPA does my taxes, I have a P&L every month, my books are clean, I'm ready.
Hmm.
But the sources warned very strongly about this clean books trap. Can you explain why having clean books is just the absolute bare minimum and not a sign of being truly ready for an acquisition?
Sure. Clean books essentially means you've satisfied regulatory compliance. You followed GAAP or IFRS or whatever the local standard is.
You've checked the boxes.
You've checked the boxes. And that's non-negotiable. You have to do that. But from an investor's point of view, clean books do not automatically mean they have confidence in the acquisition.
So there's a difference between compliance and confidence.
A huge difference. Acquisition confidence means the buyer trusts that your numbers accurately reflect the true underlying economic reality of the business. And more importantly, its future profitability. This requires a much, much deeper level of scrutiny than just standard annual reporting.
Okay, let's get into some of the jargon here, because this is where the value of the deal is really determined. You said buyers need confidence in the economic reality. This is where something called a quality of earnings, where a QOE review comes in, right? What is that, and why does being prepared for it make such a big difference?
A quality of earnings report is a deep analysis done by the buyer's own independent accounting firm. Its main goal isn't just to verify your numbers are correct, it's to normalize them.
Normalize them.
Yes. To adjust your reported EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, to show what the true ongoing profitability of the business would be once the new owner is running it.
Ah, so if the current owner is running personal expenses through the company, like their car payment or family health insurance, the QOE process finds those and adds them back to the profit calculation.
Precisely. Those are called normalization adjustments. But a QOE goes so much deeper than that. It's looking for any inconsistencies that might be hiding the true picture. For example, are you under-reserving for future warranty claims to make your current earnings look better?
Or are you recognizing revenue in a really aggressive way?
Exactly. Any aggressive or inconsistent accounting practice that artificially boosts your EBITDA will be found and reversed by the QOE team. And that can slash the multiplier on your valuation. Being prepared means you've already done this cleanup yourself. You present them with an already adjusted, trustworthy number from the start.
So what are the absolute non-negotiables for creating that kind of financial confidence? What three things really signal readiness?
Okay, number one is accurate and consistent revenue recognition practices. This is huge for any business with a subscription model. If you sell a $12,000 annual subscription, JAP says you should recognize $1,000 of that each month over the year.
Ratably.
Ratably. If you've been inconsistent, sometimes booking the full $12,000 up front, sometimes doing it monthly, the buyer sees an unstable and unreliable accounting policy. They will force you to restate all your past revenue, which is a nightmare, and makes your growth look inconsistent.
Okay, so consistent revenue recognition. What's number two?
Uniform and consistent expense categorization. You need a crystal clear policy on what's a capital expenditure, or CapEx, an asset that lasts more than a year, versus an operational expense, or OpEx, which are your day-to-day costs.
So you're not just calling things whatever you want to make the numbers look good that quarter.
Right. If you classify a software subscription as a capital asset one year and an operational expense the next, you're just muddying the waters. It makes it impossible for the buyer to model future profitability and calculate reliable EBITDA margins. Consistency proves you're not playing games with the numbers.
And the third requirement sounds like it's more about strategic value. It's about having clear visibility into your margins across different parts of the business.
This is where you prove your strategic value. A buyer isn't just buying your whole company as one big blob. They're buying the most profitable pieces that they think they can scale.
Right.
So if you can't quickly and easily break down your gross and net margins by product line, by customer type, or by service offering, and prove those margins are consistent over time, the buyer is going to assume the worst. They'll assume your one profitable product is subsidizing all the unprofitable ones, and they'll demand huge discounts. Detailed margin reporting lets you control the narrative about where the real value is.
You also mentioned accelerating due diligence. How does automating the financial side bookkeeping, reconciliations, reporting, how does that actually speed things up? And why does speed matter so much here?
Speed is currency in a deal. Due diligence is often where deals fall apart, mainly because of delays, fatigue, and just plain frustration.
Deal fatigue is real.
It's very real. When your financial data is automatically categorized, reconciled every night, and flows through integrated auditable systems like a modern ERP, the buyer's audit team can validate your numbers in days, not months. The number of errors plummets because systems are handling the data, not people.
So instead of spending 2 weeks arguing about individual journal entries from 2 years ago, their team can just run reports and trust the data flow.
That's it. It cuts out all the back and forth. It minimizes the chance of the buyer getting annoyed and walking away. And crucially, it frees up your time to keep running the business well while the deal's happening. Speed maintains momentum, and momentum is what keeps a deal alive at the price you agreed on.
So if a buyer can quickly access and, more importantly, trust this reliable financial data, what's the direct impact on your negotiating leverage?
It creates enormous leverage. Trust lowers their perception of risk. And lower risk translates directly into a higher multiplier on your normalized EBITDA.
Can you give example?
Sure. Let's say you have two companies. They both have the exact same normalized profit of $5 million. Company A has clean, auditable, automated financials. Company B has inconsistent manual spreadsheets that take weeks to clean up and explain.
Okay.
Company A might get a 10x multiplier. Company B might get penalized down to an 8x. That is a $10 million difference in the final valuation.
Wow.
And it's based purely on the quality and transparency of the financial systems. Reliable data gives you a much stronger negotiating position because the buyer can move faster and with much more certainty.
We've established that continuity, the fear that the business will fall apart after the founder leaves, is a huge psychological hurdle for a buyer. They're looking really closely at the leadership structure to calculate what they call key man risk.
The key man risk is the fear that the founder is irreplaceable. If the founder is the only one with the knowledge, the strategic vision, and the client relationships, then what the buyer's really purchasing is a high-level, temporary job for that founder.
Right, not a scalable business asset that can run on its own.
Exactly. The buyer's biggest fear is a total collapse in performance the day the owner gets their check and, inevitably starts to check out mentally.
What are the biggest, most obvious red flags that scream high founder risk?
There are three classics. The first is what I'd call operational bottlenecking. This is where the owner has to approve every single significant decision, big or small.
I see this all the time in sales. The team can get a deal 90% of the way, but the final pricing or a tiny contract tweak has to go to the owner's desk. It just creates delays.
It does. And it shows a complete lack of delegated authority. It suggests the entire business grinds to a halt if the owner is on vacation or just tied up in a meeting.
Okay, that's the first red flag.
The second is centralized relationship management. This is where the owner personally manages all the critical relationships with vendors, or more importantly, with the top customers. If those relationships aren't institutionalized, documented, and actively managed by other people on the team.
They're personal assets, not company assets.
Exactly. When the founder leaves, those relationships are extremely vulnerable.
And the third flag goes beyond just day-to-day operations. It's about institutional knowledge.
Right. This isn't about knowing how to send an invoice.
Yeah.
This is the high-level strategic stuff. The deep understanding of the competitive landscape, the 3-year product roadmap, the intellectual property strategy, the secret sauce. If all of that is locked away in the founder's head, the business has no strategic continuity the moment they leave.
So if those are the signs of a really unhealthy dependent structure, what does a healthier, more mature structure, one that actually reduces that risk for a buyer, look like?
A mature structure signals resilience. First, you have to have established strong leadership layers below the owner. VPs, directors, department heads, who have proven over time that they can make decisions and run their part of the business autonomously.
They're like mini CEOs of their departments.
That's a great way to put it. And that takes years. You have to systematically train your replacements in each key area.
And it's not enough just to give them a title, right?
No, that's the second piece. There has to be systematic delegated authority. They need to be truly empowered to hire, to fire, to manage their own budgets, and to approve decisions within clear, documented boundaries. Delegation has to be a system, not just a suggestion.
And the final piece ties it all together.
Clear decision frameworks that guide that autonomous action. This is the difference between a leader making a decision based on their gut and a leader making a decision that's guided by the company's documented strategy and metrics. A mature structure shows the buyer that the business runs on a predictable governance model. The engine is resilient.
The source material notes that automated reporting and clear dashboards are a key part of empowering these leaders. How does data help them make these high-level decisions without running to the owner for everything?
Data democratizes decision-making. It's that simple. Automated reporting gives everyone the same single source of truth instantly and consistently. So instead of waiting for the owner to approve some Excel summary they put together,
Right.
the department heads can access real-time dashboards showing the key performance indicators, the KPIs that matter for their specific area.
So if the head of marketing sees their customer acquisition costs suddenly spike on a Tuesday morning, they don't have to wait for the weekly leadership meeting to bring it up.
Exactly. They see the spike, and they can autonomously apply the established decision framework. Maybe that framework says if CAC goes above X, immediately divert budget from channel A to channel B. They could do that without any intervention. It fosters proactive management. And the buyer sees a company where accountability is backed up by objective data, which is incredibly appealing because they know they can integrate it into their own corporate structure.
Let's shift gears and talk about technology. The source material really identifies tech maturity as a huge and growing driver of valuation in modern deals. This isn't just about whether your IT works, it's about whether your technology is an asset or a liability.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. If your technology is modern, standardized, integrated, it adds real value. It promises clean, efficient scaling. But if it's outdated, fragmented, or some proprietary thing you built 15 years ago,
That's a liability.
it's a massive liability. It's what we call technical debt. It just adds integration costs and delays for the buyer.
What is it about those fragmented or outdated systems that raises so many red flags for a buyer who's trying to plug your business into their larger ecosystem?
Well, fragmentation means you have data silos. For example, your sales data is in your CRM, but your billing data is in some legacy accounting system from 2005, and your operations team tracks fulfillment on a bunch of shared Google Sheets.
I've seen that 100 times.
It's so common. And it means data has to be manually stitched together, reconciled, often re-entered multiple times. For a buyer who likely runs on a single unified ERP platform, this is a nightmare. They have to calculate the full cost of replacing all that, unifying it, migrating all that fragmented data, and they just subtract that cost directly from the purchase price.
So what they want to see is an infrastructure that promises a clean, efficient integration.
They want modern API-first, cloud-native infrastructure. They want to see systems that are industry standard, or at least highly adaptable and really well documented. If your tech stack is clean, the buyer knows they can quickly map your data to theirs, consolidate reporting, and minimize the disruption of the acquisition. It accelerates their time to value after the deal closes.
This is where the analysis really brings up a key differentiator, which it calls the AI advantage. It emphasizes that making early strategic investments in AI and automation is a huge signal of a forward-thinking business. Why is AI seen as so much more than just an efficiency tool in the eyes of a buyer?
Because it signifies optimization and future-proofing. AI-driven automation takes a business beyond simple task efficiency and into the realm of intelligent efficiency. It means your system can do predictive analysis, it can automate complex nonlinear decisions, and it can continuously learn and reduce errors in a way that simple scripting just can't. A buyer isn't just buying your current efficiency, they're buying your platform for future self-optimized growth.
Can you give me a specific example of how an AI investment signals that forward-thinking advantage compared to just a standard, non-automated system?
Sure, let's take inventory management. A standard system uses fixed reorder points. When stock gets to 50 units, order 200 more. It's based on historical averages.
Pretty basic.
Very basic. An AI-driven system, on the other hand, uses machine learning to analyze dozens of variables at the same time. Seasonal weather patterns, global supply chain disruptions, what's trending on social media, your projected marketing spend. It then autonomously adjusts inventory levels and reorder schedules in real time. It minimizes the capital you have tied up in stock while almost completely eliminating stockouts.
So the buyer isn't just acquiring a well-managed inventory. They're acquiring a system that is actively and intelligently maximizing their working capital and minimizing carrying costs dynamically.
Precisely. The buyer sees a system that is constantly learning and getting better on its own, providing a built-in competitive advantage. This completely changes their confidence in the deal. AI improves transparency because these systems are built to report on their decisions and performance, creating an internal audit trail. It reduces operational errors, meaning less cleanup for them after the closing.
And how do those factors, transparency, fewer errors, and that scalability, make the business easier for them to integrate?
Scalability is everything. If a buyer knows your technology platform can handle 5 times the current volume without a massive, expensive overhaul, they know they can immediately start pumping their capital into aggressive growth. The integration risk is so much lower because they're confident the platform won't just collapse under the increased load. It shifts their whole focus from fixing your problems to maximizing the huge opportunity they just paid for.
Okay, we've hit this point a few times, but it's critical. Risk is a direct discount on the purchase price. This next section on due diligence defense is all about risk reduction, which really just means valuation preservation.
It's the defensive pillar of the whole strategy. You can build the most innovative, profitable business in the world, but if you have a massive, unresolved legal liability hiding in a closet, that liability can wipe out all the value you've so painstakingly created. Due diligence isn't just looking for profits, it's hunting for landmines.
The source material points out some specific documentation gaps that can really slow down a deal and destroy the seller's leverage. What are some of the biggest ones that turn a minor issue into a major price negotiation?
The first one, and it's so common, is missing or weak intellectual property assignments, your IP. If you use freelance developers or even employees to help create your core software or your proprietary processes, but you can't produce signed, legally sound documents that assign all of that IP back to the company.
And you don't really own it.
You can't prove you own the core asset they think they're buying. The buyer is paying for the right to exploit that IP forever. If the ownership is fuzzy, the deal might just stall completely until the seller pays a fortune in legal fees to try and fix the ambiguity.
So if I can't prove I own my own product, the buyer has to assume I don't, or that I'm just one lawsuit away from losing it.
Exactly. The second big drag is inconsistent or missing compliance records. If you're in a regulated industry like healthcare with HIPAA or finance, or you do business in Europe with GDPR, that compliance burden is non-negotiable. If you can't provide a clear audit trail proving you've been consistently following those rules for the last 3 years, the buyer is inheriting a huge regulatory fine risk. This is a guaranteed, non-negotiable discount on your valuation.
And what about undocumented internal policies, especially on the HR side of things?
That creates internal litigation risk. If your employee handbook is from 10 years ago or non-existent, or you haven't consistently documented your policies on termination, compensation, or data security, the buyer gets very worried about future lawsuits from disgruntled employees. Every single gap in your documentation is a question mark, and every question mark in due diligence leads to them chipping away at the price or demanding more money be held in escrow.
So organization itself becomes a core component of value. Being ready for an acquisition means maintaining discipline, centralized digital records, and standardized agreements. It sounds like basic administrative hygiene, so why do so many businesses overlook it?
Because it requires incredible discipline and it provides zero immediate revenue. When you're in the trenches trying to land a huge new client, spending a day organizing a digital file structure for every contract you signed back for 2018 feels like procrastination.
Sure.
But when a buyer asks for every single employment contract, vendor agreement, and client SLA from the last 5 years, and they're scattered across 5 different people's hard drives and old corporate folders, that just creates instant chaos and signals that you're unprofessional. Centralized digital discipline demonstrates preparedness and it builds trust incredibly fast.
The final point here is about how automation can help with all this compliance tracking and document management. It sounds like a tech solution to what is, at its heart, an organizational problem.
It is absolutely the technical defense against this problem. Automation can ensure compliance by default. For instance, if you use a contract lifecycle management system, a CLM, it ensures every contract uses your standardized legal language, gets executed correctly, and is immediately filed in a searchable cloud-based library. For regulatory compliance, automated systems can track employee training, audit data access logs to prove GDPR adherence, and generate the necessary reports on demand. You're essentially building a real-time, bulletproof defense against legal and regulatory scrutiny.
So we've really dissected this strategic roadmap for being proactively ready. Let's turn now to the firm that seems to have pioneered this approach, Pagoda. The source material features their CEO, and they're very clear about the firm's purpose, helping businesses grow, scale, and sell.
Their methodology is really sophisticated because it addresses the exact pain points we spent this whole time discussing. They integrate AI insights, high-level strategic consulting, and trusted brokerage services all under one roof. That combination shows they're focused on both building the better business on the front end and then expertly executing the transaction to maximize the value of that business on the back end.
How does combining technology, specifically AI, with that human expertise actually simplify the incredibly complex decisions that business owners have to face?
Well, technology is essential for getting to the objective truth. AI is incredible at recognizing massive patterns, doing predictive modeling, and finding correlations in your data that a human would never see. It gives the owner objective, non-emotional insights. It can say, your current organizational structure exposes you to this much founder risk, or optimizing this specific workflow could increase your margin by X%.
So the AI provides the what?
It provides the what, the human expertise, the strategy, and the brokerage side, then translates that raw data into actionable executable steps. It provides the how. Here's the organizational change we need to make this quarter, and based on your now optimized profile, here is the exact type of buyer we should be targeting.
So the tech identifies the problem and models the opportunity, and then the expert provides the tailored solution and the path to get the deal done. Their value proposition seems to be about unlocking those hidden opportunities and turning these complex business challenges into predictable growth stories.
It's a real shift away from the old school, purely transactional brokerage model. They're operating as comprehensive value creators. Their mission is to empower owners with clarity and confidence, and they do it through those three core areas: AI-driven strategy, digital marketing, and expert deal execution.
Let's expand on that AI-driven strategy part. What does that actually look like in practice when you're trying to maximize business value?
It's about systematically applying data to maximize your efficiency and value long before a sale is even on the table. It means using predictive models to decide exactly where to put your capital for the highest possible return, like shifting your R&D focus based on AI projected market trends. It means using optimization algorithms to set the perfect pricing in a dynamic market. And crucially, it means identifying those operational bottlenecks or financial inconsistencies proactively before a buyer's diligence team ever gets a chance to see your data.
And the digital marketing piece is key for positioning, right? Making sure the business looks attractive to the right kind of sophisticated buyer.
Absolutely. When you go to market, you want to be positioned as an innovator, a leader in your space, not some struggling legacy business that's looking for a quick exit. A strong digital presence reinforces that whole narrative of being a forward-thinking, mature, scalable company. It directly supports and justifies the premium valuation you've built through all that operational and financial work.
The source material really identifies Black Pagoda's key differentiator as their focus on building a better business first, focusing on that operational clarity, the automation, financial transparency, strategic positioning, all of that long before a sale is ever initiated.
And that brings us full circle, right back to the foundational idea we started with. If you only focus on the transaction at the end, you inherit all the weaknesses that the buyer is going to find and use against you. But if you commit to building a fundamentally better, cleaner, more scalable business, one that can run without the owner's constant intervention, then the transaction just becomes the inevitable rewarding result of all that excellence. They're helping you sell the optimized, resilient machine, not just your current cash flow statement.
That was an incredibly detailed, really high-level look at acquisition readiness. Let's try to distill the single core takeaway for someone listening who's running a business right now, whether they think they'll sell in 1 year or maybe 10 years.
The core takeaway is this: the strongest, most rewarding exits are always proactive. They are never reactive. Owners have to commit to building systems, to automating intelligently, and to creating clarity right now. Your job isn't to wait for a buyer to come and expose all your weaknesses. It's to find them yourself, fix them, and document that fix years ahead of time.
And here's the final, I think, provocative thought that comes out of all this. The most valuable insight is that a business built to be sellable at any time is simply a better run, more efficient business, regardless of whether a sale ever actually happens.
That is the ultimate realization.
you?
Everything we talked about today: delegated authority, consistent and auditable financials, documented and automated workflows. These are just the hallmarks of organizational excellence. They reduce stress, they maximize profit, and they dramatically improve the daily quality of life and strategic freedom for the owner, even if they decide they never want to sell. Preparing for an exit is really just practicing optimal business hygiene.
And crucially, doing that preparation early gives the owner the ultimate control. Control over the timeline, control over the negotiation leverage when a buyer finally does call. You get to dictate the terms because you've already done all the hard structural work.
Control is, at the end of the day, value. When you're prepared, you can choose when you want to sell, who you want to sell to, and at what price you're willing to even start the conversation. Or you can choose not to sell at all and just keep owning an exceptionally well-run asset.
That's a really powerful message for any business owner. If you want to learn more about acquisition readiness, AI-driven automation, strategic growth, and the methodology behind building this kind of value, you should definitely check out the firm at the center of this whole analysis.
They really provide that exact blend of technological insight and transactional expertise that you need in today's market.
You can find them and explore their entire approach at www.blackpagoda.com.
This was a truly high-value deep dive today.
I agree. We'll see you next time.